Today, there's pretty much an iPhone for everyone. In fact, Apple currently sells 8 iPhone models. Miss the home button? Then check out the iPhone SE. Like the iPhone 13 design but not its price, consider last year's iPhone 12. You want a small phone with a good battery life? Then look no further than the iPhone 13 mini. Look, if you're trying to buy a new iPhone, there's a lot to get your head around. But don't worry, that's what I'm here for. To help you figure out which is the best iPhone for you, I thoroughly reviewed and tested each one on this list, from their batteries and software to cameras and displays. Now, my list is based off the current models that Apple sells. If you're shopping around, you might notice that carriers and third-party sellers have discontinued models like the iPhone 12 Pro or 12 Pro Max. So, let's get into this and let's start with the best iPhone for most people, and that would be the iPhone 13. The $829 iPhone 13 is a solid upgrade and refinement to last year's iPhone 12. Now, some will be disappointed because it's not radically different from previous models, but that's actually part of the charm. Familiarity has always been one of the keys to Apple's success with the iPhone. The iPhone 13 has a nearly identical squared-off design to the iPhone 12. It supports 5G and MagSafe charging. It has new cameras that are on par with the ones from last year's top-of-the-line iPhone 12 Pro Max. It gets a larger battery, which in our test lasted 4.5 hours more on a single charge than the iPhone 12. Add in the A15 Bionic chip, iOS 15, a new cinematic mode, which is basically a video version of portrait mode, and you have an excellent phone. It earned a CNET Editor's Choice Award. Also, if you activate it on a carrier, Apple drops the price to $799. Next, let's talk about the best overall iPhone, and that is, without a doubt, the $999 iPhone 13 Pro. The iPhone 13 Pro is the best phone Apple has ever made. With the 13 series, Apple further defined the difference between its Pro and non-Pro phones by packing the 13 Pro with a high refresh rate display, macro photography mode, ProRes video recording, and the best cameras on any iPhone ever made. In terms of design, the 13 Pro has an elegant matte finish back and shiny stainless steel sides. The display supports what Apple calls ProMotion. So depending what's being shown, the screen's refresh rate switches between 10 and 120 Hertz. And in use, it looks stellar. Animations look smooth, graphics are crisp, and even mundane things like scrolling feeds look better. It runs iOS 15 and supports 5G and MagSafe charging. And like the regular iPhone 13, the 13 Pro has an A15 Bionic chip, but get this, it has an extra GPU core which gives the phone a boost for things like gaming and video editing. The 13 Pro is stellar, which is why it earned a CNET Editor's Choice Award. But let's talk about the best iPhone deal, and that would be the iPhone 12 and 12 mini. With support for 5G being its crown jewel feature, the $729 iPhone 12 marked the beginning of a new generation of iPhone. It has a flat-sided design with matte aluminum chassis, a 6.1-inch OLED screen, and an A14 Bionic chip, support for MagSafe charging, and Apple's ceramic shield covering on the front that helps reduce scratches and damage from drops. Now, what's great is there's an iPhone 12 mini, which is simply a smaller version of the 12. The 12 mini has a 5.4-inch display and a price tag that is $100 less. The selfie, wide, and ultra-wide cameras on the 12 and 12 mini are good, but definitely a step down from those on the newer 13 and 13 mini. If you choose to get a 12 or 12 mini and can afford to pay $50 more, I recommend upgrading from 64 gigabytes of storage to 128 gigabytes. Also, if you activate either phone on a carrier, the price drops an additional $30. So, yay! Next up, the category everybody loves, and that is the best cheap iPhone, and that goes to the iPhone SE. At $399, you might think the only appeal of the SE is its price, and admittedly, it is the most affordable phone on this list, and that's a big deal. Also, it's the only phone Apple sells that has Touch ID, which in pandemic times is actually a plus. On the outside, the iPhone SE is an iPhone 8 body, and on the inside, the SE has the same A13 processor as the iPhone 11, which gives the 2017 camera hardware a 2020 injection of Apple's computational photography magic. The iPhone SE supports 4G LTE, so yeah, no 5G on this one. And it has the classic iPhone design with that large black bezel above and below the screen. But consider this, that the iPhone SE can run iOS 15, which makes it just as relevant as ever. But let's move on to the next category, and that is best small iPhone, and that is without a doubt the iPhone 13 mini. The $729 iPhone 13 mini, or $699 on a carrier plan, is brilliant because it has everything the iPhone 13 has, it's just smaller. And if you're worried about battery life, don't be. The 13 mini packs a bigger battery than last year's 12 mini, and in our test, it lasted 3.5 hours longer than the 12 mini on a single charge. It also lasted an hour longer than the iPhone 12 in the same test. Impressive. Remarkably, the wide and ultra-wide cameras on the 13 mini are identical to the ones on last year's iPhone 12 Pro Max. Now, one way you can tell this on the back is the rear cameras are positioned diagonally to make room for that larger stabilized sensor. The 13 and 13 mini are basically the same phone, but one is small and the other isn't. Now, that being said, I only recommend you get the 13 mini for its size. It is $100 cheaper than the iPhone 13, which might be tempting if you're trying to save money. But if you're not okay with a small phone, you gotta be frustrated by its size. The next up on my list is the iPhone with the best battery life, and that is the iPhone 13 Pro Max. First thing you should know about the $1,099 iPhone 13 Pro Max is that in our test, it had the longest battery life of any phone, Apple or Android, that we've ever tested. The next thing you should know is that unlike the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, the 13 Pro and 13 Pro Max are identical in pretty much every way. They even have the same cameras. In essence, they are the same phone, just different sizes. The 13 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch ProMotion display compared to the 6.1-inch one on the 13 Pro. The Max is also bigger and weighs more. Now, part of that weight comes from the larger battery, but if you can handle the size of this phone behemoth, it's worth every penny of its high price. Now let's wrap up this list with the best iPhone under $500, and that's gonna be the iPhone 11. If you don't need support for 5G, the $499 iPhone 11 is a solid deal, even right now. You get so much for the price, like an A13 processor, good cameras, a solid battery life, and the choice of 6 colors. Unlike the straight sides on the 12 and 13 series, the iPhone 11 has curved sides. Now, the biggest drawback on this phone is gonna be its old style screen, which uses an LCD panel as opposed to a nicer OLED one. But don't let that turn you away. The screen still looks good in daily use. And if you have an extra $50 in your budget, I recommend getting the 128 gigabyte version of the iPhone 11. That's all I've got. If you wanna learn more about any of the iPhone models I've mentioned, or buy one, check out the links in the description. But now I wanna hear from you guys. What's your favorite iPhone? Is there an iPhone you might recommend that I don't? Also, if you're looking at carriers and third parties, are there models you might consider from them that I didn't mention? Throw your thoughts in the comments. All right, now which one has my Apple ID on it?